We're speaking now about the crypto market, the drivers of crypto and Bitcoin, and the major news that investors need to be paying attention to right now with none other than Guy Turner, host and founder of Coinbase, one of the world's largest crypto channels on YouTube and other social media on crypto news. I'm a personal fan of the show, Guy, so thank you for being here. A little bit starstruck, but I appreciate you being on my channel. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you.
David, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you've got a great channel. I'll put the link down in the description below. People should check out your channel to learn more about the crypto news. And today we are reviewing some of the hottest topics of the week, starting with macro first. Now, Fitch downgraded U.S. credit this week, which was a surprise to many. It was interesting to notice because right after they announced this downgrade, after their press release came out 2 days ago, Bitcoin initially shot up after hours, and the next day came back down along with equities. How much of that move do you think was related to that particular announcement, or perhaps just a coincidence?
I think a little bit of both, to be honest, David. I think, Bitcoin at the moment serves as this sort of, counter asset to what's going on. So I think with any sort of shock to the US economy, any sort of bad news coming out of it, I think can conversely be very good for Bitcoin. And we saw this with the banking crisis a few months ago in particular. Bitcoin is this asset that obviously exists outside of the US, of the global financial system, and that's what makes it such an attractive asset for so many people, because it's something that can function independently of what governments and central banks are doing. So I think, perhaps this downgrading of the US credit rating, which was a bit of a shock. I guess if you consider it in the context of everything that happened with the debt ceiling fairly recently, perhaps perhaps we shouldn't be all that surprised. But yeah, Bitcoin, I think, would certainly have reacted to that in a way. I think that downgrading probably served as a timely reminder for so many people of just how precarious the US and by extent, other Western economies, as so many other economies are, how much debt everyone is sitting on. And, to be reminded of that is to be reminded of the essential qualities of Bitcoin.
And what are the essential qualities of Bitcoin?
So I think the main thing with Bitcoin is, as I said earlier, this is something that exists independently of any government or central bank. No one can print more of it. It has a defined inflation rate, a defined issuance, which coincidentally is going to halve in early next year. Which the Bitcoin halving, that's definitely going to be something to watch out for next year. So Bitcoin is this fully independent and decentralized entity. So we know how much is going to come on the market, and it can be exchanged between parties without any sort of middleman. It's a truly peer-to-peer asset. There can be no interference from any government or central bank. And the importance of that, I think, is only going to become more and more pronounced as we go along. It was created in the aftermath of 2008. It was created at a time of quantitative easing, of unprecedented money creation. And I think as time goes by, more and more people will appreciate just how important it is to have an asset that cannot be inflated away to zero.
Guy, let's take a step back and examine or characterize the current market that we're in. Traders and investors alike would like to understand whether or not Bitcoin and cryptos overall, but Bitcoin in particular, is in a bear or bull market. If you take the lows from November, it's up about 80%, but it's down about 50% from the highs. So what is this market right now?
It's a tough one to call, David, because I've heard convincing arguments to both sides of it. Let me say, I don't think we're in a bull market, put it like that. It points towards a bear market for me, but obviously you can look at this. You can look at these incredible gains that Bitcoin has had since the start of the year. Obviously, that is in context of the dreadful end to 2022 that crypto experienced. Obviously, 2022 was a bad year anyway, and then at the end of it, we had the collapse of FTX. We saw Bitcoin go really, really low, taking the rest of the market with it. So I think we have to consider this year's rise in the context of that. Crypto was in a very bad place back towards the end of last year. So, but I don't subscribe to this idea that because we've seen Bitcoin's price increase so much over the course of the year, that this is a bull market, because we are still, we're experiencing unprecedented high rates. This high rates environment that we're in now is something that the crypto industry, that cryptocurrency has not experienced before. So we have to see how this is going to pan out. Jerome Powell has said that rates are going to stay high for the foreseeable future. I don't see any reason not to believe him on that score. We also have things like regulatory uncertainty, particularly in the United States. Now, that's not to say that other countries, other territories aren't making positive progress on regulations for crypto and Bitcoin in particular. But in the United States, it's still very unclear. Bitcoin is in this weird kind of limbo. It has that commodity status, which I think partly explains its relative success over the year relative to the rest of the crypto market, because at least US investors are able to acquire BTC in the knowledge that they're not buying an unregistered security in any way. So yeah, this isn't a bull market as far as I'm concerned. I think we have a lot of obstacles to get over before that can happen. But I think the Bitcoin's relatively good performance over the year shows, I think, its value as a long-term asset. And I think investors, particularly institutional investors, are becoming more and more wise to that. Hence the increase in price. I think.
You're absolutely right in terms of sentiment. The sentiment certainly has shifted this year and last year relative to 2020, 2021, during the height of the bull market. During that time, Guy, you'll recall that time very well. Everyone involved in crypto was growing. The theme then was mass adoption, was for the masses, for retail investors and institutional investors alike. It was the first time post-2017 that institutional investors and funds really took a serious look at crypto and Bitcoin and layer ones and twos, and an explosion of activity over the space. And so adoption, I would say, was the main theme of 2021 and 2020. What is the main theme this year in 2023?
At the moment, the main theme, that's a good question. Consolidation, I suppose, to an extent. But yeah, what was interesting about that time is that there was so much focus on, as you say, on adoption, and adoption seems to have kind of fallen off a little bit. But I should caveat that by saying that we talk from a very Western perspective here. There are countries all over the world that are adopting crypto at a much faster rate, and there are plenty of places, many of them in economies that are really struggling at the moment, that actually use crypto an enormous amount. It does serve its purpose as a peer-to-peer means of transaction that, as I said earlier, exists outside of the system. So I guess the kind of narrative this year, kind of, again, it goes back to regulation. I think it goes back to this situation that we have in the United States, where the SEC is battling it out seemingly with the whole crypto industry. But at the same time, other territories are waking, or have already woken up, to the promise of digital assets, to the promise of this industry, and are making progress on allowing for it to flourish there. And I think that that is driven in part by the spirit of competition. I think that's something that you can see, particularly with the EU. EU passed its markets in crypto assets bill a while back. That is still kind of being worked on. I think we could still see some changes to that, but that was in part a response to the US kind of making overtures to kind of poach things like renewable energy companies from Europe to attract them to the United States. So the digital asset industry, the crypto industry, has served as a good counterweight to that. And I think places like Europe are adopting it, are trying to create a good regulatory environment for it. Places like the UAE, where I'm based at the moment here in Dubai, they have made great strides towards it. And of course, the most recent one, I guess, is Hong Kong. Retail crypto trading was legalized there on the 1st of June. We've just had an exchange, the first exchange get its license there. Crypto is huge in Asia. And I think in the long term, Hong Kong's adoption of the industry will be very good for it. So I guess that's the overwhelming narrative at the moment. Other places, other countries and territories making a pitch to become a crypto hub and to take advantage of this crazy situation that you have over in the United States, where there is just so much uncertainty. We don't know which way it's going to go, and you've got this regulation by enforcement by the SEC on top of it. So that's going to be something to watch very closely over the coming months and years. How the US, I think, responds to this competition from overseas.
This all sounds great now, Guy. You've got a video on your channel entitled Crypto Regulations That Could Crash the Market. I'm going to put a link in the description. People can watch this and, learn more about this in detail. What exactly is going to crash the market is my question. Aren't regulations supposed to provide clarity, stability, and more trust in the system, thus reducing volatility? What am I not getting?
Yeah, that's certainly true. But there's a fine line, I think, between good regulations and bad regulations that kind of that strangle innovation. And one of the big problems, David, is this idea of same regulation, applying regulations, same problem, same regulation. They apply regulations that are relevant to the traditional finance space, and they try and sort of crowbar them in to working, for crypto. Same risk, same regulation is what I should say. So I think there's a real danger that governments, regulators fail to understand just how innovative the digital asset industry is, and if they try to stifle the industry by using these same regulations that they apply to TradFi, then that's not going to work. And I know a lot of people come back and say, well, here's the crypto industry. First of all, they complain about unfair regulations, and then they want different regulations for their industry, but regulators have to acknowledge just what a powerful technology this is, and I think that's something that they struggle with. So my real concern is that they try to use kind of outdated regulations in order to regulate the crypto industry. A good example here, for instance, is the Howey test. This test that is applied to define a security. This is about 100 years old now. And there's plenty of arguments to say it just isn't relevant to crypto. We're dealing with a different type of asset. We're dealing with in an asset that in many cases, in Bitcoin's case, for instance, there is no third party that you can point to. Ethereum is another one. Ethereum has made huge efforts to decentralize. Can you point to a third party who is driving the expectation of profit from investing in ETH? I and many others would say no. And for that reason, I think things like the Howey test have to be reevaluated. Regulators have to look at the industry in a different light.
What is the U.S. doing that perhaps needs improvement?
Regulation by enforcement. They can be summed up through that. The US but the SEC most of all is going after big crypto companies. Coinbase is a good example. The SEC has persecuted Coinbase for years now, despite approving its IPO a couple of years ago. So that means that US crypto companies exist in this kind of limbo where they have these ideas, they have funding, they have a product, but they can't exist on a day-to-day basis without with the certainty that the SEC isn't going to come and sue them. Coinbase said many times that they tried to come in and register. They tried to talk with the SEC. They said, what is it that we need to do in order to be compliant? And the SEC just didn't provide those guidelines. And I mean, the reason was that the SEC didn't know what those guidelines were. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. They don't understand how this new asset class works. So that's the big problem that the US has.
You've covered Coinbase quite a lot on your own channel. Based on the data and the information you've looked at, can you make the assessment that Coinbase has done anything illegal?
Not that I can see, David. I should caveat that. I've looked into Coinbase a lot. Me and my team have looked into Coinbase a lot, but perhaps there's stuff that we haven't seen. But Coinbase, you have to give Coinbase its credit. Coinbase has, as far as I can see, has always tried to play by the rules, and its safety record, for instance, is second to none. They've made, from what I've seen, they've made every effort to try and keep within the rules. The problem is that those rules haven't been very well defined. And it goes back to what I said earlier. This is a public company. It's within their interests to try and stay the right side of the line. It's just very, very difficult to do that when the line isn't clear. So that's the US problem, regulation by enforcement. Now, other countries, other territories take a much more open view of it. It's like there's still this sense that regulations are in the process of being crafted. This is an ongoing process. For instance, here in the UAE, the authorities are much more open to discuss with companies registering here, to talk about and to try and find a compromise. And that's the same in other places as well. There's this sense that, okay, we might not have a regulatory framework yet, but who are the best people to work with on creating this regulatory framework? The industry itself. That is common sense from what I can see. So until the US kind of drops this regulation by enforcement MO, I'm just not confident that they're going to come up with regulations that allow the industry to thrive there.
Does it surprise you that the SEC has spent a considerable amount of time and attention on an industry that, when you look at it, is still relatively small by asset class size relative to everything else that the SEC is supposedly also enforcing?
Yeah, I mean, the SEC is there to, quote, protect investors. And sure, like let's be honest, David, there is a lot of bad stuff that happens in the crypto industry. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's it's entirely full of well-intentioned and honest people. That's not true. There are bad actors throughout the crypto industry, and steps need to be taken to prevent them operating. But as you say, crypto is a tiny industry compared to its peers. And when you think of the sort of stuff that has gone on in traditional finance for years, people like Bernie Madoff, for example, that people like him were able to take place right under the nose of the SEC. So that I think, yeah, it does surprise me that the SEC is expending so much energy on such a small industry. I think because probably it's an easy target. Crypto, unfortunately, has a very bad reputation because of those aforementioned bad actors that I mentioned, that I talked about just now. So I guess it's kind of, I guess it's an easy target in that respect.
Speaking of new developments in cryptos and good and bad actors, I'd like to get your take on WorldCoin, Sam Altman's latest crypto project. What is going on here? You're basically scanning your iris, and the company claims private information is not stored in any sort of database. It's being used primarily to help detect humans from non-humans, meaning machines, and then in return for scanning your iris, you get free crypto. It was recently suspended in Kenya due to security concerns. Have you looked at? You've looked into this. You've covered this on your channel. What do you think is really going on, and the intentions behind the company?
Yeah, we've covered WorldCoin twice, actually. We covered it back in October 2021, which seems like such a long time ago now. When it sort of first, when it first came to the fore, because the company itself was kind of operating in stealth mode for quite a long time. And then I think it was a journalist from Bloomberg sort of uncovered, what it was and what it was trying to do. And obviously, because Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, is the kind of driving force behind the project. Obviously, since ChatGPT changed the entire face of the internet last year, obviously WorldCoin has become more in focus. Its mainnet has just launched, and yeah, you sum it up very well. This idea of people gaze into these orbs, which scans their iris. Now, as I'm sure everyone knows, your iris is unique. So this is a way of proving, proof of humanity, if you like. And yeah, people are rewarded for this with crypto. Now, what's worrying is that the orbs themselves, these kind of futuristic silver balls that everyone is staring into, WorldCoin has been pretty good about open sourcing the technology behind them. So we know how they're built, and we've got a pretty good idea of where they're built, and they are high tech. I think WorldCoin invested $50 million or something in developing this, so it's pretty serious tech. The problem is that the software isn't open source, so we don't really know what's happening now. It's now the case that someone gazing into one of these orbs can opt out of having their data stored and harvested by WorldCoin. Previous to that, there wasn't that option. So we don't really know what WorldCoin is doing with this data. We have to trust WorldCoin, and trust in crypto circles is a contentious issue. So what is it essentially trying to do? It's supposedly solving this problem that AI is going to create, whereby AI is what many people believe is that AI is going to result in a productivity boom, the likes of which we may not have seen before, or we may not have seen in centuries, perhaps. So, but this is going to create great inequality. As is so often the case, a handful of people will do very, very well, and everyone else will get left behind. Now, WorldCoin is supposedly seeking to counteract this by having people scan their eyes, by uploading their this proof of humanity, and then creating this sort of form of universal basic income, if you like, which the WLD token is going to be supposedly a significant part of. So, and the kind of irony of it is that this is supposedly looking to solve a problem that the creator of WorldCoin has kind of helped create himself with ChatGPT. So it is a fascinating project. Lots of people have plenty of concerns about it. And yeah, if you want to kind of deep dive into everything, then we do have a video that we put out on our channel fairly recently that kind of delves into it and the history of it and what it is and how it works. But it sure is fascinating. But it throws up a lot of questions, a lot of concerns.
Well, yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. The one question that I have, follow up to what you said, is where are they getting the money from to provide users and people who scan their? I mean, you're getting free crypto. What does that mean? Free? Where's that from?
Well, WorldCoin got about $250 million in funding from mostly crypto venture capital. So, there are, as is the case with so many crypto projects and other projects, there are a bunch of venture capitalists behind the scenes who got in, I think, at around an average of 20 cents a token. I can't remember what the token price is at the moment, but it's significantly above 20 cents, and there's quite a hefty allocation of the token to the team and early investors. So yeah, it's the value of the token, if you like, is very much dependent on the pickup and adoption of WorldCoin in the future. How many people are going to voluntarily scan their eyes in order to receive this crypto? Now, WorldCoin, back when they launched, or back when we first covered them, I think they said by this point they plan to have scanned 2 billion people's eyes, and they're currently at around 2 million. So they're a little bit behind schedule in that regard.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate to the privacy concern, and then we'll move on. Yes, I can understand why some may not want information on their eyes being shared in any sort of public domain. That's perfectly understandable. But you're sharing your fingerprint every time you log onto a Mac and use their fingerprint login, or a phone or a Samsung. It's not big tech already has your ID. Is really just my counter argument. So I part of me understands, the other part of me doesn't, because why are you up in arms about something that really isn't new, right?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, and people. This happens a lot when we talk about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. The way that the way that these are going to have unprecedented access to people's spending records. It's like, yeah, as you say, we already give away a lot of this information. We already happily share huge amounts of our personal data online, and have been doing so for ages. I guess part of the question is, with WorldCoin, who are you sharing this data with? Are you sharing it with WorldCoin, the company? What if WorldCoin, the company, is pressured by governments to hand that data over? I think, yeah, there's a sense of trying to close the stable door after the horse has bolted. But I don't think that should distract us from the fact that we need to be more aware of who we give our data to.
Do you think CBDCs, or the coming of CBDCs, again, more than 100 countries around the world working on CBDCs as we speak, the coming of CBDCs, is that going to herald a new age of mass adoption of cryptocurrencies? Not just CBDCs, whether or not you voluntarily use them, or they're force-fed CBDCs, but at least it'll raise awareness. Is that what's needed for everyone to start looking into cryptos?
I would hope that people find some of the other benefits of cryptocurrency, not just because they feel that they have to have it as a hedge against a CBDC, but certainly, yeah, I think as people realize just how, because the problem, the big selling point of CBDCs is that they're going to be so damn convenient, and most people will just appreciate that convenience and won't look beyond the fact that, for instance, the central bank, and by extension the government, now can see and quite easily possibly control what you're spending, which is a huge breach of personal privacy. So I think it will perversely drive the adoption of cryptocurrency, because people will want to have a hedge. People will want a means of spending outside of this system, and I think that could really accelerate the kind of the peer-to-peer economy in the wake of CBDC rollout, because I think most people, unless they're willing to put up with absolutely massive inconvenience, most people will have to use these CBDCs in some form or another. It may just be for doing things like paying taxes, or for receiving things like future pandemic stimulus or something like that. But plenty of people will just happily use it for everything. But I think plenty of people will still want a way to transact outside of that system. It'll become more and more important.
One of the arguments against the adoption of CBDCs, besides the privacy concern, is that, in essence, the CBDC runs counter to the ethos of cryptocurrencies, which is the concept of decentralization, self-custody. So, technically speaking, a CBDC is a crypto, but philosophically speaking, is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, if the extent there was originally a belief that most CBDC systems would run on blockchain, and I think a lot of CBDC pilots are maybe moving away from that, because I think many people believe, or many people developing them believe, blockchain may not yet be able to scale to the sort of adoption that they're looking at. But yeah, CBDCs are anti-crypto, anti the ethos of crypto. The problem is, David, the sad thing is that a lot of cryptocurrencies are not in any way decentralized. Plenty of crypto projects make very wide-ranging claims to be decentralized, and when you dig a little bit, you find that they're not. You find that maybe they're controlled by a handful of validators on a proof of stake network. And in no way can you call that decentralized. which is one of the huge strengths of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is one of the few cryptocurrencies that you can point to and say that is decentralized. There is no single entity that can easily gain control of that network. So yeah, unfortunately, some cryptocurrencies talk the talk but don't walk the walk. CBDCs won't even pretend to do that, though. They will be centralized to the maximum possible degree.
You've covered a lot of different cryptos and altcoins. From your experience, what are the red flags that you would instantly look for to determine whether or not a project is legitimate or a scam?
So many, so many. I think partly, well, I think a good one to start with is claims of decentralization. If a project is making outlandish claims to be decentralized and quite clearly isn't, perhaps an enormous amount has been allocated to the founder, then that would be an instant red flag as well. I think it's tokenomics. The distribution of tokens is another one. And again, coming back to how much of a cryptocurrency, how much of that particular coin or token has been allocated to the team? Who are the team behind it? Quite often you'll look at a crypto project and the people behind it will have some seriously incredible qualifications. They'll be genuinely smart, brilliant people from many different walks of life. Sometimes, however, you might see they might have kept themselves anonymous. That for me is always a big red flag. If you can't find out who is behind this particular project, then that is something to be wary of as well. And one other thing I'll say as well is sort of outlandish claims to be the future of finance, or you'll see many projects claiming to be the next Bitcoin or something like that. Any project that claims to be the next Bitcoin is not going to be the next Bitcoin. So that would be a definite red flag.
How do you feel about staking?
For proof of stake, yeah, I think it's great in principle, but yeah, again, it does lead to centralization concerns. It does lead to the ability for, say, large institutions or just large whales, large people who hold large amounts of the token, be that the team or early investors or whoever, it does lead to the possibility of them being able to exert undue influence on the network. So although proof of stake is great in many ways, especially in comparison to proof of work, it doesn't have that energy usage, for instance. It is still problematic, and I know that lots of proof of stake cryptocurrencies, this is something that is top of mind for them. They are working to try and address this problem, because if an entity can just buy up an outsized amount of stake, that is a problem. That is leading towards centralization.
I want to end on the road to mass adoption. What is this road from here on until hypothetically everyone adopts some sort of crypto, some sort of blockchain in their everyday life? It strikes me that not everybody is concerned about the crypto markets because not everybody has the means to even care about it. And I was looking at a stat the other day. In America, more than 57%, or about 57% of the population, doesn't even have $1,000 saved up in their bank account. They're not concerned about investing. They're not concerned about protecting your wealth, like a lot of people involved in crypto would say, because they have no wealth to begin with. How do we get those people involved in cryptocurrencies and blockchain overall?
Good question. Again, going back to CBDCs, I think people will, once people wake up to the fact that their money is being centrally controlled and manipulated by their government or central bank, that could be a way of pointing them towards, as I said, something that operates outside of that system. But yeah, it is a tough ask for people who are living on the breadline, don't have any savings. And yeah, those rates of people are huge in the US and many other places as well. Which leads me to believe that I think a lot of crypto adoption will come from countries that don't have the same degree of financial infrastructure that perhaps we in the West are used to. We're so used to, people in Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, other sort of Western countries are so used to having a banking sector that is available to most people. Whereas people, and don't have to necessarily cope with high rates of inflation or high rates of government corruption and things like that. Whereas other countries, Turkey is a good example, Vietnam, the Philippines, places where crypto is really seeing lots of adoption. Nigeria is another one, where these things aren't so prevalent. People aren't used to having those sorts of services in those countries. That, I think, is serving very much at the moment as ground zero of crypto adoption. So how you reach those people that you were talking about in Western countries, that's a harder one to answer. But I think for many people across the world, it will be, the big selling point of crypto will be something that's not, that their government or central bank can't deny them or foul up.
I was hoping you would say watch crypto channels like Coin Bureau, learn about it on YouTube.
I missed a golden opportunity for some self-publicity. Yes,
It's
hopefully
okay.
hopefully the spread of channels like Coin Bureau and others will switch people on to what's happening. I can only hope that's the case, David.
What is your mission with this channel? Well, let's end it here. What is your mission with Coin Bureau? You've grown it to, I don't know, how many subscribers do you have now? Over 2 million? It's one of the largest channels in the world for crypto. And you started from zero. This was not Coin Bureau, for those of you watching who may not be familiar with Guy, was not another channel that rebranded. It was your own kind of, you explained this in other interviews, kind of your own hobby, pet project that evolved into what it is now. So tell us about your mission with this channel and how that mission has maybe evolved from its founding days.
Well, me and the team here, we have a passion for crypto, and we love the industry. We love what it can do, and we want to spread that message, but we want to do it in as unbiased as a way possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've had the success that we've had. We haven't been afraid to say, this is, like, when we're evaluating a project, this is what's good about it. This is why it's awesome. This is also what's not so good about it. These are the problems that we have with it. And we want to keep doing that. We want to keep being unbiased. We want to celebrate and promote the industry that we care about and that we think has so much potential, but also to do it in a way that doesn't gloss over the problems about it, that educates people about crypto in a way that's, that's honest, that gives them all the information that they need. And really what I like doing is piquing people's curiosity. I never think that someone should watch one of our videos as the kind of be all and end all. I really, what I love is when people use our videos as a jumping off point to go and explore the space in more detail, to do further research. So yeah, to educate in an unbiased way, to promote with, whilst still being honest about the industry's shortcomings.
Do you have any regrets about anything you've covered in the past? If you could go back in time and change any of the videos you've done or any of the ways you've covered things, do you have any regrets whatsoever?
I mean, sure. Like, there were, we've made wrong calls in the past. That's for certain.
Everybody has.
Everybody has. Yeah, that doesn't take away from it. So, I mean, in a way, I guess I could say I'd love to be able to go back and change that. But in another way, it's like, no, I think I believe that me and the team here have always tried to do things the right way, and to err is human. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but what we can get right is the way that we approach it, and I think that has always been correct. So, look, I'm going to own my mistakes here and say no. I wouldn't change anything.
Well, what's next for your channel? I'm talking about next week. What stories are you working on that we can look forward to?
Well, we've got something coming out about Nigeria's central bank digital currency. That's something that we've been working on as well. We should have a news update for everyone about what's going on as well. I think we're also looking into what's been happening in China with relevance to a CBDC as well. And also some interesting stuff about, I don't know if you picked up the story recently about a politician in the UK being unbanked. It's a fascinating story, so we're going to look into that as well. So lots still to come.
Excellent. Well, I'll put the link to your channel down below, and to a few of the specific videos that we discussed. Everybody should check out Coin Bureau and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much, Guy, for joining us today and speaking to my audience. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
David, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Honor's all mine, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.